ver, here, this is the first. right now in awe.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Karen Black. We'll get you doing your report in just a minute. Connie, has roll call been taken?
Through you, Chair, yes. Roll call has been completed.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Can I get an adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting held on June 11th, 2020, please? Can I get a mover? Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Sweet. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Karen Black, our esteemed chartered accountant, to present us with the 2019 auditor's report for the County of Renfrew. Karen, did you want to share your screen, or are you just going to do a verbal?
I think I'll just do a verbal. You can see the same report.
Yep.
Okay. So are we good to go?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair Murphy. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're 2 months after the fact, but we're here and we're ready to go. So you have your draft financial statement. It was in your package. I believe it's page 88 of your package, if you can get to that. We'll start through and review the draft. So just to let you know that it will look a little different than what you're normally used to with your treasury reports that Jeff Foss shows to you. So these are consolidated financial statements, and they include all the activities of your general fund, Bonshire Manor, Miramichi, and the Housing Corporation funds all together. All interdepartmental charges have been eliminated. So there are little bits of differences, but in the overall, you'll see that they do look very similar once you get into them. So this report is in draft and will remain in draft until it's adopted by County Council on August the 26th. And before we get too far in, I want to thank Jeff and his group and those finance people out at the homes for all of their help, because this was a very trying audit. We were midway through when we had to leave and come back 2 months later. So everybody's mind was totally off of audit when we came back in again. So thank you very much to everybody for all their help. Okay, so if we go now to page 90 of your report, which is going to be the management report. So this is going to be signed by Paul Morrow and Jeffrey Foss. And the management report is stating the responsibilities of management for the consolidated financial statements. And basically, in paragraph 3, it goes on to say that they maintain a system of internal controls designed to provide reasonable assurance that the assets are safeguarded, transactions are properly authorized, and recorded in compliance with legislative and regulatory requirements. So that's what the management report is for. Next page is your independent auditor's report. So this is our report now to you. And again, as in the past, you have a clean audit report. If we zoom in right on the second paragraph, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Corporation of the County of Renfrew as at December 31st, 2019. So a clean opinion on your financial statements again this year. So as we go past our auditor's report and we actually get into the statement of financial position or your balance sheet, your snapshot at time at December 31st. So as we look down, we have our financial assets. So those assets that could be turned into cash at any given time. So first one being cash. So your bank accounts accumulated across the board were $49.2 million, up significantly from the year before. Part of that reason is due to your investments, which is next line down, which is down $10 million. So we had all these GICs that came due in 2019, of which we cashed out and put into our banks in order to go forward with projects that we have. So currently we have GICs running from 1.75% to 3.51%. 2.2 million of those will mature in this 2020 year. Accounts receivable. So we have from the federal government, which is mainly your HST receivables. So it will have been, of course, received by now. And then other receivables of $580,000. So this is going to take in resident rent in the Housing Corporation, your long-term care resident rent there, paramedic tuition loans, timber revenues coming in, etc. So it was $580,000 in that particular area, for total financial assets of $58.8 million. Financial liabilities being our accounts payable of $9.3 million. So in that particular area, we're looking at our normal trade payables for all of the organizations of about $6.9 million. Wages and vacation pay payable across the organization of just over $2 million. Biggest chunk is going to be the last 10 days of December are not paid until January. So we have to accrue for those wages of those 10 days. And then just other items that we accrue for. Payable to the provincial government of $1,059,000. So this is going to be our payables for social housing, Ontario Works, and the Child Care Department for funds owing back to the provincial government. And then a very small amount payable to other municipalities, basically being City of Pembroke. So for their shared costs and ambulance and the POA revenues. So as they're all netted together, there was a small balance owing at the end of the year across all the municipalities. New this year, temporary construction loan of $2.4 million. We received it right at the end of December for the Madawaska River Bridge project. Now this temporary construction loan does go to a maximum of $6 million, and currently there was just that one draw. Another new account this year, Deferred Revenue Obligatory Reserve Fund of $3.3 million. What this represents is your gas tax revenue that has not been spent. So this money, although set aside by yourself in your own reserves, is mandated by the federal or provincial governments as to that it must be used for a particular project. And because of that, it's considered to be an obligatory reserve fund. So the $3.3 million is sitting there. Now, the reason we have so much is because we had that one-time double funding event happen in 2019, where we had an additional $2.7 million come in. And then there was an underspending of the 2019 allocation of just over $500,000. So that's what makes up Deferred Revenue Obligatory Reserve Fund. Underneath that is deferred revenue itself. So what we have here is $186,000, which is basically going to be prepayments of tenant rent in Renfrew County Housing Corporation. We have some development fees that we received and the projects have not been done yet. Prepaid leases for Algonquin Trail, and some down payments on timber sales. Long-term liabilities of $11,400,000. So these are all of your mortgages and loans and outstanding debt. We will see these further on in note 7, so we'll talk about them there. And just to let you know that one mortgage was renewed in 2019. Accrued interest on long-term liabilities. So the amount of interest that is accrued from the last payment date up until December 31st is $114,000. Post-employment benefits, $6.7 million. So included in this is your sick leave accrual of $973,000 and workers' compensation accrual based on actuarial evaluation of $5.7 million. The large increase is a $700,000 increase in the paramedic division. So we have total financial liabilities of $34.6 million. Subtracting those off your financial assets, we have our net financial asset number of $24.2 million. Non-financial assets is the next section down, and these are assets that are not available to discharge liabilities. They're not going to be cash. Tangible capital assets, $208 million. In this current year, there was $13.5 million in additions. Main categories being $8.8 million in linear assets, $2.1 on building, and $1.7 in the vehicle area, being ambulances, pickups, freightliners, graders, loaders, things like that. Tangible capital assets, construction in progress, $71 million. What we have here are those items that we are working on, but they have not yet completed at the end of the year and cannot be taken into the tangible capital asset area and are not being depreciated. So we have roads of $21.8 million. The Algonquin Trail is in there at $49.5 million, and other smaller events that happened during the year. Inventory of $672,000. So this is your sand, salt, public works construction equipment, like culverts and things like that. We have food and supplies at our homes. So that's what makes up inventories. It is up from the year before, and a good portion of that change is actually due to sandbags in the public works department. Prepaid expenses of $859,000. So what has happened here, what's normally in here is just prepaid insurance. So from the end of December up until the policy termination date is considered to be prepaid. There are some first month rents that have been prepaid. And in this current year, we have early release of electronic fund payments. So we had about $607,000 of January payments that went out right at the end of December due to early release. So that's why the amount is so much higher. So as we go down, we have our accumulated surplus of $306 million. So our next page then is going to be the consolidated statement of operations. So your activities for the year. first two lines are very self-explanatory. Other municipal revenue of $3.6 million actual. So this is your middle column that we're looking at. So that's going to be your City of Pembroke's share of the ambulance, Ontario Works, homes for the aged, and housing. User fees and service charges, $17.4 million. So this is your rents and resident fees for a long-term care home and the Renfrew County Housing Corporation, as well as lease revenue from your various sources throughout the year. It's down it's up $913,000 from what you expected in budget, and $677,000 came from the long-term care rent area, and $437,000 came from the Renfrew County Housing Corporation rent area. Government grants of $61 million received this year. So this includes your social assistance, your child care, and all those types of grants, as well as your gas tax revenue that was used this year. So we are looking at being down about $1.6 million from the year before. And these are from those claim-based types programs. So social assistance expenditures or payouts and childcare payouts were actually down compared to budget. So the revenue that we're able to accept in is also down. Investment income of $1.1 million. Increased bank accounts are basically the reason for this increase in your investment income. And then donations, fines, and other of $1.4 million. It looks very different from what was expected with your budget and compared to the year before. So there was a donation in kind for the Algonquin Trail of $6.7 million that was budgeted, but the project did not continue and did not finish in 2019, so that donation was not issued. The year before, and that $15 million number, we're looking at donated assets in there for the Algonquin Trail of $13.9 million. So total revenues, $131 million. As we continue down into our expenditures, we have them broken out by our functionality. So we have our general government of $8.2 million. It's down about $900,000 from our budget, sorry. Provision for unallocated funds was not used, and this was $384,000. Our tax write-offs were lower than expected at $102,000 lower. And then the general funds, clerk treasurer's department, wages and benefits were actually down also. Now there was a position that was expected to be filled and was not, so that's part of the reason. As we continue down, protection services of $1 million. So this is your POA department and your emergency measures. Transportation services of $18.4 million. It is up $341,000 over what was expected. And basically that's in your winter control and your depreciation areas that were budgeted. Health services of $19.3 million includes your paramedic and your health unit contributions. Down from budget, the main reason here is there was a PTSI prevention project budgeted for $400,000 and it was not completed during the year. Next line down, social and family services. So again, this is Ontario Works, Homes for the Aged, Childcare and Social Assistance, $57 million. It's down $1.8 million. And again, it's because those payments for social assistance and childcare were down. We saw the contra effect up on the top line in the government grants also being down. Social housing, next line down, $14.3 million. So this is your Renfrew County Housing Corporation group, plus other social housing with your not-for-profits. So it's down $500,000. Renfrew County Housing Corporation was down itself in areas like heat and power and repairs and maintenance. And our not-for-profit organization, our contributions to those other housing facilities was down about $100,000 from budget. Recreational and cultural services line item, that is your Algonquin Trail area. And then planning and development of $2.2 million. So this includes your planning department, OVED, OVTA, the GIS, and your forestry department. And last but not least, the loss on disposal of tangible capital assets of $45,000. So what this makes up are items that were disposed of during the year, of which the net book value on your books was higher than the proceeds that you received. In many events, we're looking at things like roofs, which have no proceeds, so we would expect to see a loss on disposal. Total expenditures of $121 million with an annual surplus of $9.9 million. This number may look different from what you have previously seen. The reason being is that gas tax obligatory reserve of $3.53 million. So as a deferred revenue, it's taken right out of the grant revenue line item up in revenues and sent over to the statement of financial position deferred revenue account. So you'll see that your surplus number is smaller by $3.5 million due to that change. But at the end of the day, the amount going into your surplus allocation to capital reserves remains the same as what was expected to be. So accumulated surplus at the end of the year of $306 million. So we will continue through your financial statements, and maybe we'll just go right into the note area. The next 2 pages are your show your changes in your net financial assets. So we know how your net financial assets were derived. And then the next page is your statement of cash flows, which is changing that accrual-based financial statement into a cash basis so that we see the sources and uses of your funds and where we spent on our capital items to get to the cash at the end of the year. Following page, then, we start our notes to the financial statements. So there were some changes in the notes. So what I'll do is I'll highlight those new notes that we have. So if we go to my page 10, which is your page 98, we have deferred revenue obligatory reserve fund. So this is that new account we talked about on the statement of financial changes. So it's just a description of the accounting policy with regards to obligatory reserves and that they are meant to be set aside for a purpose by someone other than your own selves. And then as we continue down, and if we could go to page 101 in your package, we see our temporary construction loan here for $2.4 million. And then the next note, again, is showing that deferred revenue obligatory reserve. I think it's just important for everybody to take a look at this so that we understand what's going on with this new reserve, our new deferred revenue. So during the year, we accepted in and received federal gas tax money of $5.4 million, which was twice what the normal is because we had that double shot of funding. We spent $2.1 million, so that remaining portion is $3.3 million. Next page, we're going to see your long-term liabilities. So this is where we see each one of our debts. So the first debt of $2.6 million is for the Miramichi Lodge building. Next one down for just over $4 million is your OPP building. The $3.2 million debenture is for Claybank Bridge. And the last 3 mortgages, much smaller, and they are with the Renfrew County Housing Corporation for 3 separate buildings that they have on their facilities. So for a total of $11 million, nothing is coming due in the next year, so there's a bit of time before we have to do any planning on that particular aspect. Okay, the next page, we have page 8, post-employment benefits. So post-employment benefits include your workers' compensation, and in addition to this note is down in the B section where we have stated some of the criteria that the actuarial valuation sets out in determining your liability. And then there's a graph at the bottom of the page which shows that opening accrual, the expense that we recognize this year, and then of importance and to look at is the benefits actually paid line of $1.1 million versus $835 of the year before. So it is up significantly. So even though we are accruing to increase, we are seeing that there is an increase in actual benefits paid. The very last line inside the grid, actuarial loss recognized of $2.8 million in 2018. And that's when the last valuation was done. And that was the loss that was recorded last year to bring the valuation for the liability up to the $5 million. Okay, our next page is our tangible capital assets. So as I've already described those on the statement of financial position and what we have put through for the year, but we see that we have $13 million of additions, and we pulled out $3 million of previously capitalized items that were replaced, be it roofs or vehicles. And the difference between the $3 million of disposals and the accumulated amortization and proceeds basically gets you back to that loss and disposal that we talked about earlier. So the capital assets are on page 104 and 105. So they're shown by different classifications. So this way we have our functional classification, and on our second page, it's split up by the type of capital asset. As we continue on, we're now on page 106, note 10, accumulated surplus. So this is how your accumulated surplus is broken down. We have our current reserves of $6.5 million. Those reserves set aside for capital projects of just over 40 million. The money that has been invested in tangible capital assets of $280 million. And then those unfunded items. So we have capital items unfunded of $3.4 million, being the Madawaska River Bridge of 2.5 and Centennial Lake Bridge for just under $1 million. Post-employment benefits that need to be funded in the future are 6.7. Again, that's your sick leave and your workers' compensation. And then our long-term liabilities that will require future funding, being all of those mortgages and debt structures that we talked about earlier. Okay, continuing on, we'll go to page 107. So the notes previous to this are basically the same notes as what we're seeing year over year with no major changes. New this year is your subsequent event note. This is your COVID-19 note. So it's basically, we hope, a one-time note stating that there has been something that has significantly affected operations in your financial statements and in every financial statement that's put out now. So that is your subsequent event note. And then continuing on, let us go right to page 110, which is your segmented information. I'll leave this just for you to look at on your own, but basically now it's taking those expenditures that we saw on the statement of operations and the revenues and splitting them out by by function and then by type, so that everyone has an idea of where we're sitting with our actual expenditures. So we have a 2019, and then the next page would be 2018's segmented information also. Continuing on then, we're going to be seeing an auditor's report then for the trust funds held at Boncha Manor and Miramichi Lodge, and our audit report with regards to those trust funds. Again, a clean opinion this year. And then a statement of financial position and activities on the same page for those trust funds that are held by those two organizations. So that is your financial statement. And I guess I'll turn it back to Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Karen. Very comprehensive report. Thanks for taking us through it. All right, I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to open this up for questions from council. Does anybody have anything for Karen? Such a weird year for you guys, eh, Karen?
It is. This is strange too, doing it this way.
I'm sure it is. Yes, we're all learning. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Karen, for a very thorough review of the draft financial statement. A couple of questions with respect to the, I believe it's the consolidated statement. Sorry, let me find it again here. Yes, okay, so this is page 94, the consolidated statement of operations. And a question on the line items under expenditures. And I'm wondering if it is an accounting standard that must be followed. So health services identifies only the paramedic service, and both the long-term care homes are recognized under social and family services. And my question is that the funding for long-term care is coming through the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Long-Term Care and is recognized as part of the healthcare system. So I am curious why the long-term care is cited under social and family services. Certainly at the time of the budget, because of the committee structure, it is recognized as a health expenditure.
If I can answer this?
Please.
Okay. So the way the financial information return is generated that goes ahead on to the ministry, aged persons line item does fall under the social and family services bracket. So that's why it's shown there for these particular purposes, so that it matches up with your financial information return that is sent on. Jeff, if you have anything else on this one?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. I was going to say exactly the same thing, is the grouping of those various different departments falls in line with the requirements that we have from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to report financial information, expenditure categories and departments. And of course, what that achieves for the ministry is that all 444 municipalities report expenditures in the same groupings. So there's quite a large document that provides guidelines for treasurers to group various different departments and accounts together for the purposes of reporting the FIR. And we use those same groupings, as do most municipalities, when it comes time to grouping expenditures on our audited financial statements. Hope that helps.
Thank you for that. I think somebody's asked that question years ago, but I forgot the answer, so I'm glad Michael asked it. Go ahead, Councillor Donahue.
Certainly a follow-up, and then if I may, Madam Chair, I also have a question on another matter. So thank you both to Karen and Jeff. That does in fact answer the question, is that there is a baseline foundational rationale for that. However, now having heard that, perhaps it is a bias as the chair of health, but I think it's an anachronistic element of reporting, and unfortunate that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing seems to be the basis for this, because one of the issues that I think we're going to be hearing more so on an ongoing basis now, particularly as COVID-19 has had a ravaging effect on long-term care, that certainly leading up to this unfortunate pandemic, but now in the midst of, it has been one of the challenges that long-term care needs to be properly associated with the health system. So while that certainly is going to be on the sidelines, I think this is just one more element of having to overcome an anachronistic, obsolete viewpoint. Even the term home for the aged is so obsolete at this point I don't know how long it's been long-term care. It has been long-term care since I have sat in the room that I typically would be sitting in listening to this report, not the one I currently occupy. It has been long-term care. Homes for the Aged is quite anachronistic, and there are quite a number of residents in long-term care that are not aged at all. So I certainly, has nothing to do with the audit or how it's being reported. That has been adequately asked and answered. But I think it is just one more element that needs to be put forward. Perhaps Warden Robinson in our delegation moving forward, that even from this perspective, it may seem small and trite. In my mind, it is not. It is to recognize that this is part of the health system and not part of social services system. Thank you.
So before I take your next question, did anybody else have a question? I got a note saying that the warden's hand was up, and obviously I missed it. I apologize. Warden Robinson, please.
That's not a problem, Chair. Thank you. Just on page 93, around the financial liabilities, it said, Karen was telling us about payable to the provincial government 1.059. And Karen, you mentioned that was from social services. Is that money that we contribute to a program, or is it money that we received and didn't spend? Because I really hate sending money back if that was the case.
So it is, it has a lot to do with regards to your social assistance and your child care monies. So we have expected to spend a lot more. These are all 100% claim-based type programs. So social assistance is really outside of control of anybody at County Council. So the funds come in and we weren't able to spend them all. So yes, we do owe them back to the province. And so it's not just one little program. It's a myriad of several programs to make up that $1.5 million. I don't know if that helps you or not.
Warden?
Yeah, well, it does help me. It is accumulation then of a number of issues as opposed to just one line item that we didn't spend money on. But I am still surprised that, I mean, social assistance is high on the priority of a lot of people. So I'm surprised we weren't. So I'll just check into that later. But thank you very much.
All right. Councillor Donahue, I'll go back to you. You had another question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I wanted to just follow up a little bit more on the deferred revenue vis-a-vis the obligatory, apologize, I can't remember, but it is to do entirely with the federal gas tax monies. So as I understand from Ms. Black, this is the first time that we have recorded this as a deferred revenue, which would be outside of previous practice. So previously, was that simply just recognized as part of our capital reserve?
May I answer this? Okay. So previously...
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, please.
Previously, going back through history, basically every year, the money that you received in was spent in that current year. So there really was never a balance to reserve off at the end of the year. If there was at a high point, we were looking at $6,000 to $10,000 of unspent funds. So those were just kind of tucked away in the reserve and not brought out into the forefront here in this. But due to the magnitude of the amount this year, to follow the accounting policies that are required, we had to set it up as that deferred revenue obligatory reserve fund. So it is also, if you were looking at your own treasury report, you would see that that very same number has been set aside in your own reserve funds. So the number is same, it's just shown in a different manner on the audited financial statements.
Thank you for that. Yes, Councillor Denning.
So if I might just follow up. So that is from a reporting. So it is both the doubled amount that was received in 2019, but in addition, the unspent monies from the regular allocation. I believe you had identified $500,000, I think, that was unspent of the 2.6. So that, had it only been that, would still have been recognized as deferred revenue then.
Correct. Due to the magnitude, it's recorded as deferred revenue.
Okay. And then finally, so for what we're seeing in our financial reports, our treasurer's reports on a quarterly basis, So that is still, Mr. Foss, recognized in our TCA or capital reserve then.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, yes, that's correct. The gas tax reserve is determined to be a capital reserve, and so we're reflecting that as such.
Thank you.
Excellent. Are there any other questions for Karen? Oh, yes. Hi. Sorry, Paul, I didn't see you there.
Chair, if I may, can I go back to the warden's question with respect to the money that would be sent back?
Yeah.
Maybe if Jeff can help us a little bit in the comment with respect to that's claims-based money, and maybe, I'm not sure if you're prepared to do this, Jeff, but can you give us a couple examples? Is that OW money, or if you have a couple thoughts on it, Jeff?
Sure, and through you, Chair. As Karen mentioned, this is really the balance in, we call it the due to from province account for all of our programs. So whether any provincial revenue that we receive to run our various different provincially mandated programs, at the end of the year, we typically have some amount of unspent funds, or in some cases, we actually have an accounts receivable set up with the province because they haven't cash flowed us the equivalent of the actual operating costs for some of those programs. In this current year, 2019, one of the biggest components of that amount at the end of the year, this payable to the province, has to do with social housing. You'll recall that in 2019, we had a number of brand new provincial programs coming to social housing that really didn't get off the ground. They're multi-year programs, OPI and COCHI, and we have Invest in Affordable Housing. Some of them are 5-year, multi-year programs. Some of them are 2- and 3-year programs. And so we're not required to spend all of those funds in the year that they're sent to us. And so, it's sitting as a payable back to the province of Ontario simply because we have not spent those funds in accordance with the guidelines we received, but we have lots of time to do that. This is not money that we're going to lose and not spend. This is simply a fund that it will carry over into now we're in 2020, has carried over into 2020. And it's available for us to continue using those multi-year programs.
Thank you. Warden.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So we're not sending it back. We're just keeping it in our back pocket like that.
Yeah, you really didn't like sending money back. I get that. All right. Is there anything further for Karen? Well, thank you. Oh, sorry. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to pick up on that as well then. So I get that there would be accounting standards that are driving some of this, but if it is appropriate for this to be held over, then it seems to me it's almost precisely the same as the federal gas tax. And I mean, on a going forward basis, I know that certainly the OSIF and now ISIP, I believe, do provide for setting aside in reserves to accumulate substantial sums for the larger projects. So if they're to be recognized as deferred revenue, which says essentially that they are, but they were received in the year, but they were not spent, then the answer to the warden's question is similar, and yet this is shown now as a payable as opposed to deferred revenue. Perhaps just could elucidate some of the differences of why one is recognized in one fashion and the other, because I was precisely in the same place as the warden, that this would be reconciled back to the province.
Karen or Jeff, who wants to take this?
Certainly started off. I mean, we historically have, as I mentioned, we have a large number of provincially mandated programs as a service manager. Many of those programs are actually, most of them are all subsidy-based programs. So in other words, we have some guidelines with which we deliver the programs, and we are calculating and claiming a subsidy. So think of Ontario Works, for example, where we are calculating how much money it cost us to deliver some of these Ontario Works programs. The cash flow for Ontario Works is 2 months behind. And so traditionally on a lot of these programs, we have an accounts receivable. So we've spent the money for those programs, and yet we haven't been cash flowed, or the cash flow has not followed the expenditure nature of the program. A lot of it has to do with simply the fact that we have to file a claim with the province and say, in the month of November and December, we spent X number of dollars. Therefore, your 50% share or 80% share or 100% share would be X. And so historically, we always carry a balance, whether it's receivable or a payable, for a lot of these cost share programs. The rules under which we received the gas tax were somewhat different than the ongoing multi-year operating agreements we have for a variety of our cost share programs. And those rules were very specific around, here's the pay for gas tax. And so if that gas tax money is not spent in the current year on the programs that you've been approved to spend them on, then they need to be designated as such, in this case, deferred revenue, and set up as an obligatory reserve fund. So this $3.3 million is actually sitting in our reserves, in our accumulated surplus, if you will, as opposed to those multitude of balances from the various different subsidy calculations that we make because we are a service manager and ongoing operating these programs on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, Councillor Donahue, follow up.
Just to follow up on that, just because the warden and I were both in the same place, I wonder if that would perhaps warrant a note attached to it then, because certainly in reviewing the financial statements, it certainly appears that we must cut a check back to the provincial government for that amount.
Karen, could we add a note to that particular line item?
I'm sure that Jeff and I can figure a note out to put in there.
That would be great.
Okay.
I too thought it was cutting a check. So
thank you.
It's just the way it's the way it appears on these particular statements. All right. Is there anything further? Well, thank you so much, Karen. We really appreciate you joining us like this. And
not a problem.
Recognize that this audit must not have been easy.
It was harder, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all your hard work. Oh, Councillor Donahue, you almost got away, Karen.
I almost did, yes.
I do apologize, because it only just came up in the presentation. And it was with respect, I think on this one, it is a relatively trivial matter, but with respect to the COVID, it identified that or recognized that perhaps the most significant impact might be to user fees, and I can't remember the other one, but there's been profound impact across the corporation outside certainly of user fees, certainly wages, allocation of time, etc. That I am just kind of curious how it was arrived at to propose that's user fees, and I think development charges might have been the other one.
If I may answer this one.
Yes, please.
Okay, so
sorry, it just looked like you were getting yourself organized.
I know. I was trying to find my notes here. So basically, that note is
subsequent events. Actually, sorry.
Yes, that note is just basically it's referring to the revenue sources that are going to be impacted, as opposed to the expense-driven items. So that's why the note is only saying user fees and service charges as a revenue source.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And I will ask one more time, is there anything further? All right. Well, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Hope you and your family and your colleagues are all staying safe.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
All right. So with that, we're going to go back to page 2, and I will pass this over to Mr. Morrow for his department report. Take it away, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to committee, the first item is the reopening of Ontario Act, and it's Bill 195. You can see that on page 9 in its Appendix 1. This piece, Bill 195, was one of 2 very significant pieces of legislation that was passed and received royal assent in the month of July. This particular one is the piece of legislation that extends all the emergency orders for the province of Ontario and essentially extends them from 1 year of the date of royal assent. The legislation speaks to the province's ability to renew them on a 30-day basis, but at the point of the 1-year anniversary of the legislation, any further renewals would have to be brought back to the legislature for approval. So it sets a bit of a timeline. I think the tricky thing here, and the piece that I would like committee to be aware of, is that while the province of Ontario has terminated their emergency declaration, all the pieces they put in place are still extended as a result of this piece of legislation. And that is probably the most significant piece of this. As recently as last night, I was having the debate with Shelley and Chief Nolan about some of the orders under this legislation and how it affects our emergency declaration. One of the orders that we were debating was Ontario Regulation 157 and speaks to the employment component of long-term care. And actually that order still states to utilize it, the order and the provisions of that order, the municipality must remain in a declared state of emergency. So I will be following up with Shelley and having a conversation with her about how relevant that is for us and what that means for us for the longer term in terms of our emergency declaration. Otherwise, the warden and I have been having conversations about our current declaration, and I think we have much of what we need in place, but there are some things we do need to think about with respect to the implications of Bill 195. Chair, if I may, I'll continue on to item number 2. Item number 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2 is the community messaging, and it's the messaging that our communications team has been putting out. I know the folks that sit around the Emergency Operations Center are very familiar with this, but I do want to congratulate Mike Barber and the other staff that have been working very closely with public health and others to get these messages out on social media. And you can see on page 3 a few examples of the work that they've done. Thank you, Chair. I'll move to item number 3, supporting Renfrew County virtual assessment center and local municipalities. This speaks to the work that, again, is being done by the crisis communications team in promoting and advocating for VTAC. Council has endorsed VTAC and has committed to making sure that we do our best to ensure that it stays in place post COVID-19 as a great opportunity for our residents. And I know through social media, through road signs and other pieces of equipment, we are advocating and promoting for the VTAC program. If I may, I'll go on to item number 4, staff communications. Speaks to we're trying to get a newsletter out to staff every couple months, and there'll be another one going out, essentially just messaging to staff where we are with COVID, reassuring them with respect to our operations are, business as usual. And we talk a little bit about things like the service delivery improvement project. So it's our opportunity to convey some staffing messages and reassure our staff. Number 5, it's just the work that Mike has been doing with respect to grant funding And the first item is a $25,000 grant application, and that will be part of the service delivery improvement project, or the reconstruction of this building, that will provide for a couple spots for electric vehicles should they be successful with that grant. Item number 6, you can find that appendix 2 on page 13. And that is the second piece of legislation that was passed, Bill 197, which received royal assent on July 21st. Probably for us, and you'll see on page 5, the three or four key bullets there that will affect directly the county of Renfrew. The first bullet with respect to electronic participation in meetings and proxy voting. That item is dealt with in item number 7 in my report, and I'll get to that next. Changes to the Development Charges Act. Bill 197 expands that definition to include social services like childcare, affordable housing, long-term care, and emergency preparedness. So things that were not in the Development Charges Act in the past. What concerns me a little bit about that is the question, is the government setting the stage for providing another tool for municipalities to fund these rather than transfer payments down the road? So they have now put that provision in the development charges, and I'm a little concerned that this may be something that we need to look at down the road, and that statement is in my report, Chair. Changes to community benefits charges under the Planning Act doesn't affect us, but I put it in there to make sure that local municipalities were aware of that as well. Finally, municipal court administration under POA proposed amendments to the act to allow court filings and proceedings to continue. I just noted that as one of the key items. And again, that is addressed in Mr. Foss's report in page 20, on page 28, item number 5. If I may, Chair, that brings us to the bylaws.
So can we go back and just do information? Because I think that there might be some conversation around this particular bylaw.
Okay.
So if we go back to page number 2, information item number 1, reopening Ontario. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Councillor Donahue. Yeah, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly.
Michael, just so you know, you are freezing at certain times.
It is quite chilly in here, I will admit. I recognize the importance of some of the emergency measures enduring beyond the actual declared state of the emergency. As I understood the state of emergency, I think that this was from a e-blast that AMO had distributed. Under the legislation, I believe the government had the authority to continue to extend emergency orders. What would terminate at the termination of the declaration was that they could not initiate any new ones, nor could they bring back any that were let lapse, nor could they amend any of them that were in place. So what does give me some pause here is I recognize the state that we still remain in, the pandemic state that we remain in, but I am certainly given some concern over the circumvention of the legislature for this. I would have just as many concerns if this were something in front of us at a municipal level as at a provincial level, that I do have some concerns about extending this kind of authority that would be outside of the legislative process.
Thank you for that. It has caused some confusion in the general public about what state Ontario is actually in. So that's concerning when, people are getting mixed messages. So, all right, number 2, community messaging. I will say that our footprint on social media has been exemplary, and I too would like to thank Mike Barber and his team. I think this is it definitely helps with our constituents. Number 3, VTAC. All right, I actually had a thank you from one of our residents yesterday about VTAC. Apparently, a doctor got back to her within 5 minutes of her contact. So unbelievable work. Number 4, staff communications. Number 5, grant funding. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Chair Murphy. I just note particularly the first paragraph, how neatly that would fall into our Renfrew County Climate Change Action Plan. I think that was supposed to come forward in Q1 of 2018, as I recall, Mr. Morrow. I'm wondering what the status of that is, if that's coming along fairly well.
Thank you for that, Chair. I will follow up with Mr. Kelly. I know he has been doing some additional research on that particular item, but I will follow up, Chair. Thank you.
Very pleased to hear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anything further on 5? 6, the Economic Recovery Act. Again, some concerns and bit of confusion with this as well. I couldn't make it through the entire act, but I understand Paul he just took it to bed every night and read and read and read, right, Paul?
Couldn't keep my eyes open, Chair.
I recommend the audiobook.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And thank you, Paul, for giving us sort of the highlights that affect us as a corporation. All right, with that, I'm going to move on to the bylaw. Paul, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to committee. Moving on to item number 7. If with your permission, I will read the recommendation.
Yes, please.
That the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that County Council approve the following amendments to the procedural bylaw to allow for electronic participation in meetings until June 30th, 2021. And further that, a new section 6.2 electronic participation in meetings be added in order to hold electronic meetings according to the following guidelines. Chair, I hesitate on this one just for A, because I wish A was not in there. And if I could amend that to include A.
And Paul, my apologies. I meant after our conversation about this bylaw, I meant to call you and say, I think we need a friendly amendment to take that out.
Okay, so I will.
Because it's in there, and God forbid that this particular inaugural, we have to meet like this. And the ward, Warden Robinson.
Paul and I have that discussion too. So I guess when you get a mover and a seconder, we can then look for a friendly amendment to it.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes, Councillor Donahue.
Actually, I'll defer certainly to Mr. Morrow on this. It strikes me that to remove one of 4 clauses is kind of outside of the realm of a friendly amendment.
Yeah, and it could just be a motion to amend the resolution.
Okay, so let's continue on. Or do you want that motion now?
No, let me finish it and we'll go back.
Excellent.
So here's procedurally the challenge is this, Chair. We are at committee as opposed to county council, so we have a little bit more flexibility. At the present time, I have not actually read the resolution into the record yet. So I'm giving myself some latitude, but process.
Yes, Councillor Donahue.
I think that's a misplaced latitude because the report has been presented already to committee, whether read or not.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not a draft, so that's fine. Call for it's fine. We can call for an amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillors will not participate in meetings electronically for the inaugural meeting. B, any councillor participating electronically must be located within the province. In the event of an interruption in connectivity for a member, interruption in connectivity for a member that is participating electronically, the meeting will resume without the participant and their absence will be noted in the minutes. D, all members participating electronically in a closed session of council shall declare the head of council and the clerk that they are in a private room where No other person can overhear the deliberations. The internet connection is secure and not publicly accessible, and it is strongly recommended that councillors wear earbuds or headphones when in a closed session. And further that, Section 7 of the procedural bylaw, place of meeting be amended to read as follows. All of the meetings of council will be held in the council chambers of the County of Renfrew Administration Building, 9 International Drive, Pembroke, Ontario, or at such place as the warden and the chief administrative officer / clerk may from time to time. And further that, a bylaw to amend bylaw 85-10, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of the council and committees of the County of Renfrew, be adopted at the next session of County Council. And further that, council not take any action on proxy voting at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. So I need a mover and a seconder, then we have to defeat this and then do a notice of motion, correct?
You just have to do a new motion.
Okay, Warden Robinson.
I'm ready to move it.
Oh, awesome sauce. Okay, can I get a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brose. Hey, James. So then I need to ask the mover and the seconder if they're okay with removing A. Is that correct? As a notice of motion? Councillor Dunn.
That would just be a friendly amendment. So you would need, so the motion is on the floor right now. Okay, you now need a motion to amend this resolution.
All right. So can I get a mover and a seconder to amend the resolution? Moved by Councillor Donahue.
Actually, if I might, Madam Chair, I am making a motion that, I don't know, sorry, is there a number associated with this one?
It's
My
section
motion,
A.
Okay.
It's 7A.
7, sorry, but I am making a motion that subsection A of item number 7 be removed from the motion in its entirety, and all subsequent clauses be lettered appropriately.
I was just going to say that. Okay, can I get a seconder for that, for the amendment? Can I get seconded by Councillor Hunt? All right, is there any discussion about this? All right, I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that carries. Excellent. And now I need yes, Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to speak around item number 2, item B.
Oh, okay.
And perhaps I'll ask Mr. Morrow for the reason for this one. Yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. To be honest with you, which is a good thing, when the warden and I presented, the warden presented to the Standing Committee for Finance and Economic Advisory Committee a couple of weeks ago, I did call the clerk of the legislature about their procedures with respect to us participating in that Zoom call and provide the presentation. And the clerk got back to me and said one of our rules that the legislature passed with respect to all standing committees and within their terms of reference is that members of the provincial legislature are permitted to participate in electronic meetings. However, they must declare that they are in the province of Ontario. That's where that stems from. And I thought for consistency's sake, we would include that as well.
Follow up?
Yeah, so a couple of concerns around that. One is we've been discussing this locally here, and I believe there should be a clause in here that that talks about the reasons why somebody could attend a meeting electronically. I don't think any of us should have the ability of saying, I'm going to attend next county council meeting electronically because I don't want to drive to Pembroke.
Yeah, Paul.
So there should be some rules on around why that is. And I think it falls into this category under the same as B. The issue that I have with that is that I believe somebody should be allowed to attend a committee or a council meeting electronically if they are away on municipal business. And then the concern I have with B is the fact that if I'm at FCM in Alberta or Quebec or Halifax, this clause is saying that I can't participate in the meeting.
So Paul,
And I'm away on county business, on municipal business, but I can't be part of the meeting. It doesn't make sense to me.
yes, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'll draw your attention to the last line on the page 5 with respect to the recommendation, and that is that the electronic participation in this meeting until June 30th, 2021. And the intent of having that was to put these provisions in place, and I was trying to line it up with Bill 195 and the extension of the orders from the province in terms of a timeline to revisit this. At that time, when you look at the background of the document and you look at the provisions that fall on the top of page 8, those are things that we could open up and have additional conversation to see where we are at as a council when we get to June of 2021. And at that time, we could better determine how satisfied council is with the amendments to the procedural bylaw and make additions or deletions.
And just for you, Glenn, Paul and I had a lengthy discussion about this particular bylaw, and it's why I sort of left it as a standalone. You know, I completely agree with you. This shouldn't be, I just don't want to drive to Pembroke. But I would say that, you know, knowing that cold and flu season is coming, if we were able to return to the chambers, I think that we're all going to be a lot more cautious about how we interact, or if we attend, if we are ill. You know, there are so many different things going on right now that we're sort of going day to day. And that's why I also asked Paul about this deadline, or this drop dead date of next July or next June. But I think that this is, you know, we're all learning at this time, and you know, Paul, going with what the province and the feds are saying, I think that's where this stemmed from. Yes, Councillor Sweet.
What province are you talking about on number B?
Ontario, sir.
Doesn't say that.
Yeah.
Can we not have that in there? As it could be BC, it could be on Manitoba. Must be located within the province. What province? Province of Ontario. I think that should be stated.
Yeah.
No, I think that could definitely be a friendly amendment.
Yes.
Yes, if the mover and seconder are okay with that.
You know, I think that should be there. Fine.
Yes, Councillor Doncaster.
Okay, I didn't mean to confuse the issue, but I still have an issue with the statement that the person attending has to be located within the province of Ontario.
What if we added a caveat to that particular note that you could ask for special permission, especially in your particular case?
Either that, or it could say located within the province of Ontario unless the member was on municipal business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that could work.
That would work.
That would work. You're right.
Within Canada.
Now, come on.
Chair, we would need a chair.
No, but I like where Glenn's going with this.
So again, that would be a motion to amend it, and so
Okay.
we motion for that amendment as well.
Okay. Okay, Glenn's moving. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Packett, nice to see you, sir. All right, Michael, did you have your hand up though?
The motion's
I'll defer while this motion is on the floor, Madam.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't know what because you keep freezing out on me. All right, so can I get, I'm gonna call for the vote on that amendment. I think it's an excellent thing. So what we're going with is located within the province of Ontario or on county council business. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, Councillor Donahue, noted. And did you have a comment?
Yeah, it wasn't germane to that per se, that it has been now passed. I would certainly suggest that, at least from the province of Ontario, since the legislature of the province of Ontario has a jurisdiction over the province of Ontario, it makes sense. If we were to follow that logic, then in my estimation, it would be within the county of Renfrew, because that is the jurisdiction over which we have. Ultimately, if that is the nature of the provincial requirement, then even being somewhere else within the country of Canada does not make them eligible to do so. Having said all of those things, I don't know how many more perhaps proposed amendments may come forward. It seems to me that this probably still needs, at least in my estimation and with my vote, it still needs some substantial refinement. I'm quite concerned about this. I think at the very least, even if at the very top line at item number 7, it had said COVID council meetings or something to that effect, because it seems like it's being written precisely for the pandemic that we're in, as opposed to recognizing participation in electronic meetings. And likewise, at the very least, I would require within the recommendation on 7, not just that it lasts until June 30th, that in fact the current policy on meetings, or that this be stricken on that date and we go back to the old one, that it is in fact sunsetted in its entirety. I cannot support this at all. And I have some reservations about doing this, not least of which is even the nature of being excused only from 3 months of meetings. Anyone from anywhere can log into this meeting and turn their camera off. So as it is written now, I cannot support it.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Paul.
Chair, I do believe the first part of the recommendation actually does sunset it. So it does say that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends the County Council approve the following amendments to the procedural bylaw to allow for electronic participation in meetings until June 30th, 2021. So it's
Right.
until June 30th.
It's in your background that you suggest that we revisit it, not in the resolution
But
or in the bylaw.
that's this.
Yeah. All right, well,
Chair, you still need to
sure
call for
there'll
the
be-
vote on, you still will need to call for the vote on the amended resolution. As
I
amended.
did. Everybody agreed to make
Not yet.
Oh, I thought we already did that.
That was just the second amendment. We've had 2
Oh.
amendments that we voted on.
This is getting to be like the US Constitution. So I need a mover and a seconder for the other amendment. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
No, you don't. You just need it as amended.
Oh, I just needed
To vote as amended.
I thought I called for the vote. My apologies. All those in favor?
What is it we're voting
Yeah,
on?
so-
What are we, I don't know what we're voting on. I understood that we've already voted on the 2 amendments. So
Yes.
are we now voting on the original resolution as amended? Is
Yes,
that what
ma'am.
we're doing? And we already
Yes.
have mover and second.
Correct.
Okay,
We're
discussion.
voting on the amended motion,
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
Incorporating as well the friendly amendment of Ontario in place of province.
yes.
We actually
can I have
incorporated Ontario into the warden's wording when she read in the province of Ontario and on municipal business, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that mover and seconder are good. So all I need to do is call for the vote. All in favor?
Recorded, please.
Good.
We don't do recorded votes during committee.
At committee.
Oh, we can do, yes, we can.
Uh,
Yep,
They
it's not
actually
weighted.
are, they are just not weighted?
Yes, that's what I said, sir. Okay. Okay,
Hey, Paul.
I will go through. Councillor Beckett, for or against?
Oh, Tom, you're muted.
$100.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sweet, for or against?
For.
Warden Robinson, for or against?
For.
Councillor Hunt, for or against?
For.
Councillor Donahue, for or against?
Opposed?
Councillor Bros, for or against?
For.
Councillor Doncaster, for or against?
For.
Thank you.
I don't get a vote?
Oh, sorry, Warden, our chair, I was leaving you to the last. Murphy,
For.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. At that, I need a.
Second time he called you warden. I'm keeping
I
track.
know. I caught that too. You know what? Now I just ignore it. So now I need a mover and a seconder for the administration department report, please. Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Peckett. Anything further on Paul's report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. It is 5 to 11. Do you guys take just a few minutes and I will check with Annette about our query about how to log on to AMO? Or do you want to continue? Because I am assuming she's done now.
Sure, let's take 5.
Okay, 5 minutes, guys. It is 5 to 11. So at 11 o'clock, please. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Thank you, and welcome back, everybody. Thanks for that. And now we will move to page 26 of our report, and I will turn this over to Mr. Foss. And we do have an addendum to this, to the finance report as well, number 13, which came in a different email. So Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Finance and Administration Committee members. Beginning on page 26, item number 1, under information is council remuneration, and that is the treasurer's statement up into June the 30th. Item number 2, and attached as Appendix 2, as well as Appendix 3, is a copy of the treasurer's reports to June the 30th for the General Revenue Fund, Bonnechere Manor, Miramichi Lodge, the Renfrew County Housing Corporation, as well as the Public Works Division. Item number 3 is 2020 budget guidelines, and I have attached as Appendix 4 a draft schedule, something that we do each and every year when we provide that to this committee at this meeting, culminating in we're trying to put our name on a couple of dates early in January 25th and 26th, for targeting our budget workshop. And of course, that's the end point, and there's an awful lot of steps that have to happen before we get to the budget workshop. And with that in mind, I have provided to you the April 2015 resolution by this committee and county council, indicating the elements of our long-term financial plan. And so all we're asking for at this meeting is for this committee to give some consideration to a number of items. Staff would be seeking direction at the September meeting of this committee for a confirmation of the principles outlined in our long-term financial plan, the overall levy target for 2021, some understanding of council's wishes for a non-union COLA increase in the 2021 year, and then of course the approval of the draft budget schedule, getting us to those dates in the month of January. Item number 4 is really an update from the Provincial Offences Court, really just commenting on workload issues for those staff members from April through to July. You'll notice that there is a dramatic increase in charges in the month of July. Compare that to the month of April, where we only saw 298 charges were processed through our office. And in the month of July, 1,239 charges. And as is typical, that the offset of that is the number of files that we're able to read from a historical perspective. And that number has dramatically decreased with the increase in activity levels in the month of July. We do still have the note below that chart indicating that beginning March the 16th, the Chief Justice for the Ministry of the Attorney General has adjourned all POA courts and any enforcement activities that includes driver's license suspension lists up to and including September the 11th of 2020. So that is our current end date for the suspension of all those activities. I think that date has changed 4 different times since March the 16th. So I have no information to share with you at this point in time as to whether or not that September the 11th date will be moved. But as of right now, staff within the POA administration office are working to prepare for the resumption of courts, both in person and electronically. The top of page 28, item number 5 is Bill 1897 and the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act. So Appendix 5 is a memorandum dated July the 23rd from the Ministry of the Attorney General, just simply indicating that Bill 197 received royal assent on July the 21st. And Appendix 6 is a memo dated August the 5th, indicating that Bill 197, as well as Schedule 18 of Bill 197, amends the Provincial Offences Act to remove all barriers to electronic delivery of documents and remote appearances in POA proceedings. Item number 6, something from MFOA, is the Government of Canada's Economic and Fiscal Snapshot. That Appendix 7 is found on pages 62 and 63. There is some sobering information for all of us about the economic impact of COVID-19 at the federal government level. There's some references to an awful lot of financial indicators that have not been seen since we recovered from the aftermath of World War II. Item 7, from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, we did receive early on a cash float of an indication that we were entitled to a cash float of $51,206 from MMAH. This was specific to temporary pandemic pay for eligible workers within the supportive housing and emergency shelter sectors. And of course, we are not responsible for either one of those programs or operating those programs, and that cash flow payment to us.
Jeff, you're cutting out now as well.
Oh, sorry. I wonder if I should just stop my video and we'll try that. Item number 8 is just an update from the OMERS Sponsors Corporation. Appendix 8 is a letter indicating that effective June the 24th, 2020, there were 3 items that are amendments to the OMERS plan specific to COVID-19, and they are extending leave purchase deadlines, reducing or eliminating the 36-month employment requirement for purchases of periods that included reduced pay, as well as permitting temporary layoffs as a purchasable service item. There are 2 more amendments that were approved by the Sponsors Corporation that will not take effect until 2023. And those 2 items are non-full-time expansion of the program as well as shared risk indexing. Item number 9 is a letter that was received on August the 20th from the Honorable Christine Elliott, Deputy Premier and Minister of Health, advising that the County of Renfrew will receive $8,636,827 as our funding with respect to land ambulance services for the 2020 calendar year. My note is that the 2020 County of Renfrew budget anticipated funding at $8,872,473. That does leave us a shortfall in paramedic service funding of $235,646. Item number 10, really a follow-up on some decisions that County Council had made earlier in the year, which was at our April meeting to suspend all penalty and interest charges for local municipalities on the June 30th, 2020 levy installment. And we had a number of bylaws that were supporting that suspension of penalties and interests. I did report at the April meeting of this committee, as well as County Council, that the tax policy working group, when we made that recommendation to you, we did so with the understanding that any levy dollars, county levy dollars that were received by lower tier municipalities by the June 30th deadline would be forwarded on to the County of Renfrew. And we are pleased to report that at least at the writing of this report, 16 of our 17 lower tier municipalities had in fact provided either full or partial payments of that levy payment by June the 30th. Item number 11 is really an update on an item that came before you in the month of June. We had our committee adopted this resolution recommending that a bylaw and lease agreement be forwarded to County Council at our June meeting, authorizing the warden and the clerk to sign a lease agreement with Macquarie Equipment Financing for the Semantic Broadcom software licenses. Unfortunately, we did not receive those lease documents prior to our June, I believe it was June the 24th meeting. We have since received those documents, and I have attached those as appendix number 11, and they will go forward to all of County Council at the end of the month for adoption. Madam Chair, I wonder if you would like me to just hold at that point at the end of the information items, or should I proceed?
Well, I was going to say, do you want to do number 13? Because it's also, the addendum is also information.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did send out separately an email with item number 13, an information item. Apologize, but there was an awful lot of things happening at the very last minute. The title of item number 13 should really be the Safe Restart Agreement dash COVID-19 funding. A component of that announcement was in fact the social services relief funding component, but we are referencing the federal provincial Safe Restart Agreement. And so yesterday we received a letter addressed to our warden, Debbie Robinson, advised that Ontario had secured up to $4 billion in emergency assistance for Ontario's 444 municipalities to deal with our response to COVID-19. As a result, phase one of this funding would be allocated on a per household basis, and the County of Renfrew is entitled to receive $2,780,100, again on a per household basis, in our support in dealing with COVID operating costs and funding pressures. It didn't take me more than about 30 seconds to sign the agreement and to send it back to the minister, indicating that we would love to have that funding please forward as soon as possible. And so I have attached as appendix, well, that's 1517, also an AMO policy update that came following that letter, providing additional details on not only this funding, but also one of the subcomponents, which is the social services relief funding initiative. And that, Madam Chair, would be the end of the information.
Excellent. So we will go back to information item number 1, council remuneration. Number 2, the treasurer's report as at June 30th. Councillor Brose.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Jeff. Jeff, just from our Renfrew County Housing meeting yesterday, in the rent arrears, it's gone up 50%. And just wondering, moving forward, is there any indication when the adjudicated hearings are going to resume? And I guess the second part to that question is, could this COVID expense financial pressure money be used to pay off some of those arrears?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You can't see me, but we're waiting for that. You know, I think as always, you know, the devils are in the detail a little bit with some of these funding agreements. So I fully expect to receive additional information with some eligible expenditures or categories of expenditures. However, we have already, you know, sort of done a little bit of brainstorming around some of the pressure items that we're dealing with that we hope would be funded by this new $2.8 million COVID relief fund. So for example, within our development and property division, we very recently approved the payment of $200,000 to the business development fund to help Renfrew County businesses get up and get moving. The resolution previously by this council was that we would take that money from the provision from unallocated funds. In my mind, I think that's an excellent opportunity for us to perhaps use this $2.8 million to fund that business development program. So we'll look at all of these pressures very carefully and see if in fact they fall within the eligibility guidelines from the ministry. The ministry was very clear to say that if you didn't spend money in 2020, that you must tuck that money into a COVID reserve fund, and that reserve fund then would be able to offset pressures that would be coming in 2021 and perhaps beyond. So, yeah, like in Renfrew County Housing, you know, if we can draw a parallel to say that some of those rent arrears are directly attributed to folks, you know, having challenges in being able to have employment to pay their portion of rent geared to income, then I'm certainly hoping that we can use some of this fund to offset that as well. So we've got some time between now and the end of the year to really quantify and identify all of those items that are pressures upon us, and to see if we can't help to support that through this new fund.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. We received, I am assuming everybody received notification yesterday of our local tier allocated amounts. And this was the exact conversation, James, that I had with my CAO. What are we allowed to use it for? So as Jeff very astutely said, I think the devil will be in the details. I was surprised that they rolled it out without a little more meat on the bones, but I'm sure that we will know within the next few days. Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we're on item number 2, and that discussion just ensued, I'm wondering, sorry, let me preface this also. Yesterday, we did discuss significant COVID impact in health committee, certainly in the long-term care homes, as everyone would be much aware, and likewise in the paramedic services. This has become a fairly large component of our governance and governing ourselves right now. But I'm wondering if for the September committee meeting and ultimately council meeting, much like in 2019 that we assembled the modernization pressures, impact of provincial government decisions and what the impact would be on budget. I wonder if we could have a separate report that is COVID related, that incorporates revenues already received. I know both the Manor and the Lodge have received one-time funding. Likewise, the paramedic services received one-time funding. There was some fairly lengthy conversations that perhaps pandemic pay, I believe, was captured in that for one of the reports, but perhaps not all of them. I apologize also, I just got that message that my internet is unstable. As unstable perhaps as the owner. In any event, I wonder if that could be put together as a separate report on what has been the impact both to expenditures and revenues to date.
Mr. Foss?
I'll turn my video back off again just so that the sound is clear. Oh. Can everybody still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So at our last meeting, I believe at our June meeting of committee and council, my office had pulled together a summary, if you will, of the impact of COVID on our corporation. And I think we reported on a department by department basis so that we could get a pretty good understanding of, for example, Miramichi Lodge and what funding they had received to date and what were their COVID operating expenses, as well as incremental salaries that we had been capturing and reporting. And at May 31st, I think the net unfunded impact of COVID for the first couple of months of this pandemic was just over $500,000. And so that's an impact to the County of Renfrew taxpayer. I think what we're seeing now is, you know, that trend obviously continued for the month of June. And certainly we can report fully in September, or this meeting in September. You know, we haven't really necessarily, we won't have closed off all of August financial activities, but maybe to the end of July, we can give this committee and all of County Council an updated snapshot of where we are with respect to our net burden and COVID-19. But certainly the influx of $2.8 million, given the trends that we're currently on, looks like it will be sufficient, to kind of cover our 2020 operating expenses unless something really spikes in the last couple of months of the year. And so I'd be more than happy to kind of pull that together and provide it to this committee.
That would be great. Thank you for that. Follow-up, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, and thank you to Mr. Foss also. And certainly a component of that to bear in mind, the pandemic pay issue that the province undertook and is funding completely is a flow through. But of course, as the chair of the Health Committee, I can advise that just the regular operations of both long-term care homes have changed substantially from a visitation perspective, from a screening perspective at the door, that are outside of what has directly been funded by the province. So it would certainly be my estimation that the funding flowing now for COVID-related reopening would certainly apply to those, because those have been borne certainly by the Treasury of the County of Renfrew.
Thank you for that. Okay, anything further on number 2, the treasurer's report? Seeing none. Yes, I think, Jeff, I think that would certainly help all of us understand where our deficiencies are and where that money could be put. Number 3, the 2021 budget guidelines. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I looked at previous Finance and Administration Committee agenda from previous years. And I know it's been recurring, because one of the things that does seem to be missing here is the September 30th council, because certainly I believe that it's appropriate that the committee could certainly approve the budget, but with respect to the overall target levy increase and the non-union COLA, that's not decided until such time as the September 30th council meeting, as opposed to the Finance and Administration Committee meeting, and that date is not contained within nor has it been historically contained within that budget schedule, that it might be advisable just to amend that budget schedule and insert that into the key dates, because of course council will be the key date.
I have no problem with that. Does anybody on committee have an issue with just entering in that whatever the September County Council meeting is? I see none. So Jeff, you can go ahead and add that. I do wonder how we're going to do budget if it's by Zoom. I have some concerns, but I guess, again, this is sort of a day-to-day kind of thing. So I guess I'll wait for later on in the year, but I think that this will be very challenging way to do budget, especially because Sean is telling me now that it seems to be an all over internet problem, that people are freezing up on us, which is very frustrating. Anyway, anything more on number 3? Yes, Councillor Hunt.
Yes, one of the items, and we did discuss this last year, was the bullet point new debt for projects in excess of $3 million. I personally don't believe that should be there. I think that we should assess the need for new debt for projects over $3 million. And if we look at what we did this year, I think Mr. Doncaster raised the point when we did have a debt and we chose to self-service it. So I don't believe we should be putting it in there as something we have to do when it is a decision we make.
Now, Jeff, you correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that when we first instituted this line, that it was a suggestion, not a rule, but just gave us a benchmark that 3 million and over could be debt financed. But again, yes, Brian, you were absolutely correct. We made the decision to self-finance for that particular project. So I thought it was a suggestion, but not a rule. Jeff? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Really, for the purposes of beginning the work in the fall to create the long-term financial plan, we need to develop some parameters so that we can have something to present council in the month of January. So these were the guidelines, if you will, that staff are using to prepare this long-term financial plan to see if we can adequately fund our capital needs, and operating needs going out 10 years. But it is always under the approval authority of council to change that at any point in time and make any other decisions that they wish. It's really the guiding document that gets staff moving in a unified direction with a single purpose, attempting to meet council's direction for all of these activities. But not that it's written in stone, and any one of those things, with council resolution, any of those things can be amended and adopted. And in fact, the budget workshop, any of the changes that we make at the budget workshop are then summarized under the budget bylaw itself at the end of that meeting. And so we do routinely make some changes to the suggestions in this guiding document, if you will, and it's always council's decision.
Brian, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am. I had one follow-up on that, though.
Please do. Go ahead.
And it refers to the budget sessions. At last year's budget meetings, there seemed to be, I believe it was at the finance meetings, where we were asking questions and perhaps would have liked changes, but there wasn't time to get changes done if we were going to hit print for the council meetings. And I wonder if that should be looked at in the budgeting schedule this time, so that when finance committee looks at a complete package, that if there is some areas of concern and a general agreement that changes should be made, that there is time to do that, and not be restricted to or be challenged with making changes because we can't get to print.
I was going to bring that up at our meeting this afternoon, Brian.
Okay.
You stole my thunder.
Well, there you go.
Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up and agree 100% with Mr. Foss that it is the purview, the obligation, in fact, of council to each year. You will note on page 27, the item number A is confirmation of the principles established with the long-term financial plan, and that is part of what we do. You will also recall last year, and I cannot remember the particular substance of what the proposed amendment that came forward that was actually rejected, and we returned to the initial resolution that was passed in April of 2015. But speaking to what you had raised as that was a suggestion, it is not, so long as the guidance for budgeting is still that resolution passed in 2015. The new debt for projects in excess of $3 million is not a suggestion, it is a target. And it certainly is absolutely within the means of council to at any time change that. I think I have been quite clear that there are some of the things in here that I am not prepared to confirm on a going forward basis, and have each year at the target setting made those known, and likewise at the budget. So I just wanted to speak to that, though, because yes, that is, while that resolution is in effect, that is not a suggestion, it is a rule.
Okay, that's not the way I've taken it since we've instituted that. I thought it was the decision of council. These are just, as Jeff said, they're sort of guiding documents for staff to prepare us with a budget. But if you think it's written in stone, that's not the way I've ever thought it was. But I think this isn't a resolution. This is just the suggestion of where we're going in the next few months and laying out our budget dates for 2021. But I don't disagree with Councillor Hunt. We were getting a little late in our timing prior to budget for anybody to have a real in-depth look at what we were going to be discussing over the day or 2-day planning or budget session. Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we've historically done with information that comes to committee in the month of January, and any changes that any committee wants has been to summarize those changes and sort of in our budget presentation, present the information that went to each committee, and at the end, summarize and present all of the changes. So, and we're doing that simply because of the very short time span between the end of F&A, the committee meeting, and budget workshop, which happens before county council. And we have a very short window to print and produce all of those documents that you have on your desk for the budget workshop. So I see Paul's video is turned off, but what this may mean, if we need to have a little bit more time, is to do one of two things. One, look at presenting budget information to committees before the end of the year with the goal of still having budget workshop in January, or deferring the budget workshop until the month of February, perhaps, to give us enough time to capture all of the changes at committee and to get that into the printed document or even the PowerPoint presentations, because of some of the changes are substantive. I think in 2020, I think we had 21 or 22 different changes to the budgets presented to committees from what was adopted at the end of the budget workshop session. So, I'm more than happy to go any way that council or committee wants to go. It's really just a practical matter of how do we get all those changes? How do we update all those charts and PowerPoint slides and print them, or assemble a package so it's ready for council to review shortly thereafter. It's really a practical matter. That's all.
What about bumping up committee week? Like moving committee week to the first week of January as opposed to the second? That would certainly give us more time. Ooh, crickets. Yes.
I'm just looking at the calendar.
If I might, Madam Chair, that might be a solution. I think that probably in, let us say, typical times, I think one of the other kind of logistical issues is Roma is generally inserted right into the middle. I think it's in particular that gap between budget workshop and council meeting at the end of the month that it would certainly be advantageous in advancing the committee meetings, but I dare say that we may have to advance the budget workshop dates also to accommodate that logistical challenge of incorporating whatever changes are made into the final.
True story. You are correct. But I think for our committee meetings, I don't see any reason not to bump them to the first week. But that might be a discussion for a later time. There seems to be some consternation on Paul's face.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the calendar, and then something I'd like to discuss with the warden and Rose and Jeff.
All right.
About the timing.
I think this probably could be deferred because we don't have to approve the budget schedule until September, correct?
Right. Exactly. So let's leave that with you, but I definitely agree with Councillor Hunt. It would have been advantageous to have more time. All right, if there's nothing further on budget, I will move on to POA. Number 5, the Economic Recovery Act that we also spoke about in Paul's report. The municipal finance officers, the Government of Canada Economic and Fiscal Snapshot. Number 7, MMAH. Number 8, the OMER sponsors. Number 9, the Land Ambulance Service Grant. Number 10, the levy installment for June. And I know it's going through everybody's head. Who is the one of the 17? Brian's face. Number 11, the semantic software license. And we're going to jump over 12 to the addendum, number 13. Yes, Councillor Doncaster.
Just a quick comment. It's certainly not acknowledged in any of the recent correspondence, but previously, I would say most definitely this funding was a direct result of the advocacy and the position paper that FCM put forward, and then working the details out with the provinces on how to flow that money. So I'm really proud to be part of that organization and a lot of the work that they're doing, and happy to see this starting to flow.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you for your work with this association. It's extremely important, and we're very, very blessed to have you sitting on that board. Are you just now acclaimed for another, like, because there were no elections?
So no, the AGM is going to happen in October this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Excellent.
it's been extended till October, and then next year's term will be shorter because it will go from October till June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Sorry, I just it just popped into my head. All right, if there's nothing further on information, Jeff, would you like to present us with the resolution for the auditor's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So item number 12 under resolutions is the 2019 Auditor's Report. And if you will allow, I'll read out the recommendation.
Yes,
that
please.
The Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that the financial report for the Corporation of the County of Renfrew for the year ended December 31st, 2019 be approved. On page number 31 is some background information. And of course, in accordance with the rules and regulations of Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada, the auditor's report must be approved by the governing body for the corporation. There are three other documents that Black & Locke have provided to us. Item number 1 is a independence letter indicating their independence, as well as a summary of the audit fees. So $47,001 is the audit fees for 2019 activities. And again, that's for a $150 or $60 million corporation. So really very, very pleased with the work that they do. And certainly I think we get good value for our money there. Item number B is the recommendations letter, and suffice to say, they have no specific recommendations that need to be considered by council based on the 2019 audit findings, which are enclosed in item number C. And of course, item D is the draft report that once adopted by County Council at the end of the month, the draft is removed, and those are our 2019 audited statements.
Thank you. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Brose, seconded by Councillor Sweet. Is there any more discussion on the audited financial statements? The draft audited. Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. All right, and can I get a mover and a seconder for Jeff's report? Moved by Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Doncaster. Is there anything further on the finance report? All those in favor? Thank you. We have no human resources report at this time. Is there any new business? Seeing none. We have no closed meeting. The date of our next Finance and Admin meeting will be Thursday, September 10th. And of course, County Council this month is Wednesday, August 26th. And at that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Brose. All those in favor? Look at that. The only person we lost was Tom Peckett. See, 11:45, Warden, you're going to make your next meeting.